Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Thursday, June 22nd. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We're coming off another Yankee win last night. That is now 2 straight victories for the New York Yankees. And look, we'll take it as a fan. You're obviously happy about it. You know, we've been struggling. You're coming off that 4-game losing streak against the Mets in Game 2 of the Subway Series, and then obviously getting swept over the weekend of the Boston Red Sox. But you get the job done Tuesday, you get the job done tonight, and you go for the series sweep today with Clark Schmidt on the mound, Anthony Volpe, Billy McKinney, Jake Bauers, providing the power last night for the New York Yankees with 3 homers, 4 runs scored, and the Yankees got the job done 4-2. So, look, you're happy about it. This team still, again, it's the Mariners. They've underachieved a little bit this year. It's 2 good wins. As I mentioned, find a way, 3-3 homestand. I mean, you're looking at it now, maybe a 4-2 homestand. Just find a way, play around 500 to a little bit of above 500 baseball until Judge eventually comes back. Rodon obviously is on a rehab assignment right now with the Somerset Patriots. Until he comes back, just try to find a way to keep your head above water before some of these reinforcements come back. Hal Steinbrenner yesterday made some interesting comments, to say the least, made some frustrating comments in terms of why fans are frustrated. He doesn't know why fans are frustrated, which makes no sense to me. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to understand why Yankee fans are frustrated with the way the seasons went, but that's besides the point. Got to keep the good vibes going. Final game of the 3-game set tonight. You go for the series sweep, and they are now 2-0 since my rant. And I like that. When I rant, I hope that my teams turn it around. And I say that a lot. Anytime I rant about a team, whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Nets, whether it's the Rangers, whether it's the Jets, even opposing teams, I'll talk bad about another team, or I'll lay into another team like I am today with the New York Mets. That's going to be the first topic of today's show. You always hope that that your team can turn it around. So the Yankees, maybe this is the start of a turnaround, 4-2 homestand. Maybe they take 2 or 3 against Texas. I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but 2 good wins to open up this 6-game homestand. Close it out tonight against the Mariners, and then welcome the Texas Rangers to town tomorrow into Sunday for a 3-game set against one of the best teams in baseball in the Texas Rangers. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. Get you ready for the Yankees-Mariners game tonight. We got to start off today talking about the New York Mets. As they lose 2 of 3, they lose yet another series. Their struggles in June continue, and not even just June, but their struggles all year long continue. And I am going to go out on a limb right now. With the way this thing is going, I don't even know at this point. At the beginning of June into May, when the Mets were hovering around, 3 games under 500, they're now 6 full games under 500. They are, completely done in the division. 13 and a half games back in the division, and they are now 7 games back in the National League wild card race. If this isn't rock bottom, then I don't know what is. But to be honest with you, all signs are pointed to this Mets season is over. And we're going to get into it. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper look at the numbers. I'm kind of at the point now with this Met team where it's over. I don't think they're going to come back. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I know it's only June. But, they've now gotten themselves into a situation where there is 5 teams ahead of them in the National League wildcard race. They've got to jump 5 teams and the Dodgers or the Marlins to get into a wild card spot. That's how much work the Mets have to do, because they got no shot in the division. I think the season's over at this point here as we sit here on June 22nd. So we'll get into the Mets, their latest series loss against the Houston Astros. And the guy to my right, I know you can't see him on the screen, but Henrik Lundqvist, got a big Henrik Lundqvist fathead to my right here. He has officially been inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. We'll get into that. Well-deserved for the King, one of the best goaltenders of all time, the best goaltender, obviously, in Rangers history. And, what a career. Well-deserved, well-earned. We'll get into some of his numbers, talk about his great career, and another accomplishment for Henrik Lundqvist here in retirement. Obviously got his name up in the rafters at Madison Square Garden last season, and is now, his next step was getting to the Hall of Fame. Was first eligible this season. First ballot Hockey Hall of Famer Henrik Lundqvist gets in yesterday, so great to see that as a Ranger fan. We'll get into that as well later on, and obviously get you ready for the Yankees-Mariners tonight. Mets with a much-needed day off before they head to Philly for 3 games. And the Phillies right now, they did lose game 1 of the Braves series. Game 2 got postponed last night, but the Phillies are playing a lot better. They're 4 games up on 500. They're 39 and 35, or 38 and 35 rather. 3 games up on 500. They're 2.5 back of the Dodgers in the National League wild card race. The Mets got to watch out. I mean, there's a good chance to go into Phillies and at least lose 2 of 3. So we'll get into that stuff later on as well. But we got to start today talking about the New York Mets, as I mentioned. Not a surprise to talk about that here in the open. So the Mets lose another series to the Houston Astros after starting out with obviously the Game 1 win over the Astros on Monday, 11-1. Was a great start for Max Scherzer. They then lose Game 2, 4-2. Framber Valdez throws an absolute gem. Mets offense can't get much going. Justin Verlander was all right, as I mentioned on yesterday's show. I thought he pitched okay. Again, he had some of the struggles, allowing 3 runs in that 1 inning. I believe, 3 runs in that 3rd inning. After that kind of settled in, gave the Mets 7 innings of 4 runs. They ended up putting 1 more in the bottom of the 7th. But all in all, gave him some length. He at least kept him in the game, but that's not good enough when you were going up against Framber Valdez. And to be honest with you, you didn't sign Justin Verlander $40 million. You're not giving him $40 million a year to give you 7 innings of 4-run ball. You're giving him $40 million a year to give you 7-8 innings of 1 to 2-run ball, not allowing 4 runs, not having those 3-4-run innings like he had in the 3rd inning of that game on Tuesday. So you lose Game 2 of that series. And then you go into Game 3 last night, or yesterday afternoon, I should say, the series finale, and you lose that. And you lose that while scoring 8 runs. And Tyler McGill goes out there against Christian Javier. You're getting the Astros, you got Astros 3 better pitchers in Brown, Valdez, and you got Javier yesterday. And I mean, the Mets hit Javier yesterday. I mean, they hit him. He was out of there after 2 1/3. Tyler McGill didn't pitch well. And you start to wonder now what Tyler McGill's future is with the Mets. Are they going to option him? Are they going to, get rid of him? What is his future with the Mets? Because, he had a good start with the Cardinals, or against the Cardinals last week, which they got the win in that game. Game 1 of that series on Friday. They ended up losing the next 2. But all in all, in this season, he's been bad. He's got an ERA north of 5. He goes out there yesterday, doesn't pitch well. Was out of there after 2 1/3 as well. Out 5 runs, 4 earned. Wasn't good. His ERA, as I mentioned, 5.17. Anytime your ERA gets above 5, it's ugly. So you wonder what the Mets do with Tyler McGill. He hasn't been good enough, and every 5 days he can't take the ball because it's basically an automatic loss at this point. It's similar to Clark Schmidt earlier in the season for the New York Yankees. Every 5 days Clark Schmidt took the ball, it was an automatic loss for the Yankees. That's basically what it is for the New York Mets. I know he pitched well the last time out, but 90% of his starts this year have been really, really bad, especially recently. And yesterday it showed. So you lose that game 10-8 despite scoring 8 runs. And after a series that started off so promising with a 11-1 victory in Game 1, Daniel Vogelbach playing well against St. Louis. Maybe he's starting to hit for power, hit a home run in Game 1 of the series against Houston. You lose the next 2 games. You lose 2 of 3. And the Mets now coming out of this series, going into Philadelphia to play a Phillies team that has been on an upward trend. They're healthier now. They're now 3 games up on 500. They've spent the majority of the season below 500. They've now gotten over the 500 mark. The Mets now go into Philly coming out of Houston, 34-40 on the season. I don't even know if I should tell you how far back they are in the division because it doesn't even matter at this point. 13 and a half games back in the division race. 13 and a half games back. And to be honest with you, what's worse is they are now 7 games back in the National League wildcard race. And here are the teams that are in front of them. Not the 3 teams that currently hold wildcard spots, but here are the 5 teams that are in front of them, I should say. I think I said 7. Here are the 5 teams in front of them. Phillies, Brewers, Cubs, Padres, Pirates are the 7 teams, or the 5 teams in front of them in the National League wildcard race. And the NL Central's up for grabs. You got the Reds playing well. If the Pirates, obviously, if the Pirates, who have been slumping right now, have lost 9 straight. If they find a way to turn it around, play like they played earlier in the season, the Brewers obviously are a team that, recently has struggled. They lost the series to the A's, I think last week. So the NL Central's still up for grabs. But You've got 3 teams in the NL Central. You've got the Padres, and you've got the Phillies. Those 5 teams are ahead of you. The 3 teams in the National League right now that currently hold spots are the Giants, the Marlins, and the Dodgers. To be honest with you, as a whole, the National League wild card is wild right now. It's crazy because, like, you look at the Phillies team, a team that got to the World Series last year, is currently on the outside looking in. The Padres are 6 games back of a wild card. With all of their pieces, they're 6 games back. The Dodgers right now are only 2.5 up in a wild card. Like, the National League wild card this year is wild. It is so crazy. Like, nobody expected the Padres to be 6 games out of a wild card spot. Nobody saw the Mets being 7 games out of a wild card spot. There's so many surprises in the National League, and unfortunately, the Mets are one of those surprises for the wrong reason. You know, the Reds have been a very good surprise this year for the right reasons. They're 40-35. They've won 11 straight. The Mets are a surprise for the wrong reason. They feel a lot like the San Diego Padres. They're underachieving so much. But you go back to the division, and again, this Mets team, the story of the season for the Mets this year has been the inconsistency. And we've talked about this so many times in this podcast, where they'll win 2 out of 3. They'll sweep a team. You know, I go back to that Tampa series. I don't even know when it was at this point. I know it was in May. I don't know when. It was probably mid to late May. Baseball season, as the baseball season goes on and the weeks just go by and by, you lose track of it. You know, through 162 games, you lose track of when each game happened and, you know, how long ago it was. But you go back to that Tampa series and you go back to that homestand where they took 2 or 3 against Tampa. They swept the Guardians, and they went on the road, had that 2-4 road trip against the Cubs and the Rockies. And then they came back home after that road trip. After that, tough road trip against the Rockies and the Cubs in games that they should have won, games that they scored a lot of runs in, but they couldn't pitch, right? They came back home and they swept the Phillies. And this is where I want to get to my next point here. So as I mentioned, the Mets are now 13.5 games back, and this was eye-opening for me. As I was getting ready for the show today, and I was crunching some of the numbers, and I was looking at some of the stats. You go back to that Philly series at the end of May and the one game they played in June. The Mets swept the Phillies. You got the Blue Jays coming to town after that. At that time, the Blue Jays were like a struggling team. They were only, I think, like 4 games up on 500 going into that game, 3 games up on 500 going into that game, game 1 of that series. They were starting to struggle a little bit. I believe at that point of the series, or I think they might have actually been last in the AL East. The Red Sox may have jumped them at that point. But more importantly, the Mets got within 3.5 games of the Atlanta Braves. It was like 3.5, 4 games of the Atlanta Braves. At that point, they ended up getting swept by the Blue Jays. They went into Atlanta, got swept by the Braves. They lost 2 of 3 against the Pirates. They beat the Yankees in one of those games, in a game that they had no business in winning. But they split against the Yankees, lost 2 of 3 against the Cardinals, and most recently have now lost 2 of 3 against the Astros. Coming out of that Philly series, before that road trip against Atlanta, they got within 3.5. They got within striking distance. They got within a point where if they went into Atlanta, took 2 of 3, it could have been a 1-game, division lead for Atlanta. It could have been a tie in the division for Atlanta and the Mets. It could have gotten to that point because the Mets at that point were 30-27. Since that point, since the sweep of the Philadelphia Phillies, the Mets are now 4-13 since, and they have now fallen to 13.5 back. They have now dropped like a full 10 games from that June 1st victory, officially getting the sweep against the Phillies. That to me is crazy, just to show you how much this season has completely spiraled out of control for the Mets, and it's resulted in the 5-13 June. And the 4 wins since that, well, one of them came against the Pirates, which obviously meant nothing because they still lost that series. One of them was an ugly win against the Yankees. One of them was the win against the Cardinals, in which they still lost that series. And then the other one was game 1 on Monday against the Astros, and they still lost that series. So to be honest with you, it's not like the 4 wins meant a ton because they all ended up in series losses anyway. Obviously, they split against the Yankees. Those are the 4 wins since. That's how bad the New York Mets are playing. That is how much this season has completely collapsed since that point. And if this isn't rock bottom for the New York Mets, I really don't know what is. And another number I wanted to give you, too. So they are, since June 21st, or June 21st yesterday, I should say, they lost, obviously. 40th game of the year, they lost yesterday. Last year, and this is, I believe the SNY page posted this, so I give credit to them. It was a great nugget on this. Mets lost their 40th of the game yesterday, June 21st. Last year, they lost their 40th game August 12th. I mean, that is wild. August 12th was when the Mets lost their 40th game last year. And here we sit in June of this year, and the Mets have lost 40 games already. That is just crazy to show you the difference in teams from the New York Mets last year to where they are this season. And many would say, on paper going into this year, they had a better lineup, better roster this season than they had last year. And again, it's all around. It's not just the hitting. It's the pitching. It's the fielding. I mean, that Yankee series, watching those games, I mean, Nimmo with the error in the field, losing that game 7-6. They made mistakes all over the place. It's mistakes on the base paths. Like, there's so many issues, not stealing. It's the mental errors, letting IKF steal home. Like, there's so many issues. The Mets, again, good teams find ways to win. And I've said this before. Good teams find ways to win. Bad teams find ways to lose. The Mets are a bad team. And I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sure a lot of fans have kind of come to this conclusion already. The season's over. I'm ruling it, the season is over for the New York Mets. I don't foresee them coming back from this. I know it's only June 22nd, but they are 7 games out of a wild card spot. They are playing some of the worst baseball we've seen this play team in over a year. I mean, we didn't see them play this bad last year. Even down the stretch last year when they choked away the division, they weren't playing this bad. It's just they went into Atlanta, Atlanta played well, they played poorly, but they played poorly, don't get me wrong, but they are just flat out horrific. When they score runs, they can't pitch. When they pitch, they can't score. There's so many issues with this Met team, and there's really no fixing them. I mean, who are you going to acquire at the deadline? What are you going to do? Acquire a big bat DH at the deadline? Great. You can go ahead and do that. But at the end of the day, you need Lindor to hit better. Marte, McNeil, Nimmo's been all right, has made a couple poor plays in the outfield. He's been fine this year. He hasn't, not nearly what he was last season, but I wouldn't say he's been the biggest problem for the Mets. Nimmo's far from the biggest issue for the Mets. The Mets got a lot of other issues. Lindor not playing up to his standard. I mean, look, you look at Lindor and you look at the home runs and you look at the RBIs. He's got 51 now on the season, which is tied for 10th in the MLB, but the batting average is so low. I mean, it's 217. It is so low. And to be honest with you, when you look at Pete Alonso, I mean, this is a guy that, when you look at his numbers, he's hit 23 home runs. That's great. Mets fans got to come to the realization. This is what Pete Alonso is. He's a power hitter. He's a little bit of a higher, more average guy. He's a higher average version of a Kyle Schwarber. That's kind of what Pete Alonso has turned into. And maybe that comparison's crazy and ridiculous, but this is a guy that's going to go out there, give you 35, 40 home runs a year. 45, he can crack 50. We saw it in his rookie season when he hit 53, right? He can do that. He's not going to hit for average. He's just not. He's a 220, 240. He's a low on base. He's going to hit home runs. His OPS is going to be well over 800. That is what he's going to bring to the table. Mets fans are complaining that Pete Alonso, and again, there is every right to complain, but that's just what he is. So even there with Pete Alonso, sure, he's hit home runs, but he doesn't hit for average. He doesn't get on base a ton. It's boom, power, or bust with Pete Alonso. That's just the player he is. And Pete Alonso's not playing well. Jeff McNeil, who won the batting title last year, I mean, he's batting 267. His OPS is below 700. I mean, for a guy that doesn't hit for power, you've got to hit for more of an average than 267. So this Mets team's got issues all over. And again, they scored 8 runs yesterday. You should not lose that game scoring 8 runs. They scored 10 runs against the Braves. They lost. 7 runs against the Pirates, lost. 6 runs against the Yankees, lost. 7 runs against the Cardinals, lost. I mean, there are so many games. You go back to May. I'm just looking at the game log here. 9 runs, or I apologize, 10 runs against the Rockies, lost. Not 9. 10 runs against the Rockies. They lost that game 11-10. 7 runs against the Rockies, lost that game. I mean, there are so many games that the Mets have scored 7, 8, 9, 10 runs and lost. And then there's also a lot of games that they've lost where their pitching's giving them great outings. Look at the Blue Jays series. 3-0 they lost. 2-1 they lost. When their pitching's good, they can't hit. When their hitting's good, they can't pitch. This team's got issues all over. And, I mean, I just don't see them coming out of this. I really don't. It is ugly. It is ugly. It is really, really bad for the New York Mets. And there are no signs of it getting better. And you look at their schedule coming up. Again, they've got 3 against the Phillies team that's playing well. We'll see how these next 2 games going against the Braves. I believe the Phillies play a doubleheader today against the Braves, with last night's game getting postponed. So we'll see how the games go today against the Braves. I believe it's today. Maybe it's not. Maybe they rescheduled it. No, it's rescheduled for September 11th. I apologize. So they're playing right now against the Braves. We'll see how that plays out. But still, it's still a Phillies team that's playing better than what they were the last time the Mets played them. And you're in Philly. Then you get Milwaukee, who, is all right, but you get them for 4. You're back home. The Mets have actually been a better road team this year than they have been at home. And you even look at like Brandon Nimmo's splits this season. He's just the guy I just threw out there. They've actually been a better road team than they have been home team. It's interesting. It's weird, but it's just the way it is. Then you got San Francisco. It's one of the hottest teams in baseball. Then you got the Diamondbacks, who are one of the biggest surprises in baseball this year. They're 15 up on 500. They're first in the NL West. They've been better than the Dodgers this year. And then you've obviously got San Diego to finish out that West Coast trip afterwards. And then it's the All-Star break. There's a good chance the Mets go into the All-Star break. There's a chance the Mets go into the All-Star break 10 games below 500. 9 games. 9 to 10 games. It's legitimate. Because 3 against the Phillies, 4 against Milwaukee, then you welcome the Giants, who are red hot right now. They're 10 games up on 500. They've won 10 straight. I mean, a Giants team that is on fire. Then you get the Diamondbacks and the Padres out west. And West Coast trips aren't easy. Now, I know they had success earlier in the season out west, but the Diamondbacks are going to be a really tough beat. And, the Padres have been very disappointing. So we'll see how that series plays out. There's potential they take 2 of 3 there, but even at that point, I mean, they might go 1-5 against the Giants and the Diamondbacks. There's a serious chance that they do that. And they can't beat the Cardinals. They can't beat the Pirates. They can't beat the Rockies and the Cubs. That's how bad the New York Mets are. And their schedule doesn't get any easier coming up. They missed their chance. They had an easy schedule to start the season, and they blew it. And now they've got some tough matchups. And they're playing their worst baseball. If this isn't rock bottom, I don't know what is for the Mets. Just some other numbers to give you here. Again, you're paying Max Scherzer, who gave you a good outing, obviously, on Monday, but Verlander's been way too inconsistent this season. You don't even know, who to trust. Verlander, Scherzer gave you that one good outing, but then he got rocked against the Yankees. And then, Verlander was good against the Yankees, and then he pitched all right, but, he pitched okay against the Astros in Game 2. And look, scoring 2 runs isn't good enough, but it was Framber Valdez. You've got to pitch. You can't let up 4 runs against Framber Valdez. Valdez is going to ERA in the 2s. You just can't do that. So especially 3 in 1 inning. That's a 4/5 starter type of start. Give you 6 innings, 4 runs, solid for them. But when you're paying Verlander $40 million a year, you got to expect more than 7 innings, 4 runs. You just do. The Mets are 26th in ERA, which is 4.68. Last season, to put that in perspective, they were 7th in ERA last year at 3.57. They've got a team batting average of 241 this year, which is 19th in the MLB. Last season, they had a 259 batting average, which was 2nd in the MLB. So it just shows you how good the Mets were last year when they won 100-plus games and how bad they've been this year. They were 7th in ERA last year. They are 26th this season ERA. They've been one of the worst pitching teams in baseball. They're 26th in ERA out of 30 MLB teams. They're at the bottom of the league with some bad teams. And when you're paying Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander that amount of money, to be 26th in team ERA is brutal. Just to give you some other numbers, they're 25th in earned runs. They're 21st in runs allowed. They're 28th in home runs allowed. They've allowed 104, which is, just awful. And a lot of that's come from Scherzer and Verlander. They've given up a lot. I think both of them have had a game this year, or maybe 2 games. Scherzer and Verlander, where they've let up 3 in one game. I believe Scherzer did it earlier in the season against Milwaukee, and I think Verlander did it recently. And just look at some of these other numbers. 21st in hits as an offense. They're 28th in doubles. They are 4th in strikeouts, so I guess, that's fine. They're 20th in strikeouts as a pitching staff. They're not striking out guys at nearly as a high of a rate. 22nd in walks, 21st in runs, as I mentioned. Like they're at the bottom of the league in some of the main statistical categories when you look at their rotation. So it is brutal. It is embarrassing. Comment down below. What are your thoughts about the Mets? Is it over? Is it done? Are they going to come out of this? Are they going to get out of this? Like, at one point, at what point, though, do the Mets consistently put it together? Like, they've shown flashes. Like, they had a good win on Monday against the Astros. They had that win on Friday against the Cardinals. They let the Cardinals come into Citi Field, a Cardinals team who has been one of the biggest disappointments this year. Like, the Cardinals, the Mets, and the Padres have probably been the 3 biggest disappointments this season. You could probably maybe throw the Mariners in there too, because I think a lot of people had high expectations for the Mariners this year, and they're 2 games under 500 now, and they've really struggled. But in terms of the big money teams, they went out and got Wilson Contreras, they got Goldschmidt, they got Arenado. The Cardinals got pieces. They're just failing. The Padres, we all know what they did this offseason, and the Mets too. So you get another disappointing team. The Cardinals are 31-44. They're even worse than the Mets. And you let them go into your home state. You let them go into your building and take 2 of 3. So, and, you could talk about, just find a way to win each series. The Mets can win a game or 2, and that's it. And it's the inconsistency is just wild. It is crazy how inconsistent they are. One night they're scoring 1 run and losing 2-1. The next night they're scoring 8 runs and losing 10-8. That is how inconsistent they are. They can't put it all together. And their schedule doesn't get any easier. So I'd assume that this is probably rock bottom. They've got to, you've got to at least, to give yourself a fighting chance, I would say, in the second half of the season, you've got to at least go into the All-Star break, which is creeping up. As crazy as it sounds, the All-Star break is right around the corner. I don't think many people realize that. The All-Star break's right around the corner. The Mets have got 3? They've got 3, 4. They've got 5 series left before the All-Star break. The All-Star break starts July 9th is the final games, and then the All-Star break goes into that, and then Friday games will start back up again. The All-Star break's right around the corner. There's only about 5 series left. So, you win 3 of those 5 series. If you take 3 or 4 against Milwaukee, maybe, and find a way to take 2 or 3 against Phillies, you got to at least go into the All-Star break, I'd assume, 500 if you want any fighting chance at the second half of the season. Because then what, too? If they're let's say there's 8 games under 500 going into the trade deadline, what do they do? Do they, they're not going to sell. They're not going to do that. Or are they just going to keep rolling with what they've got? There's so many issues on this team. One piece isn't going to do it. Bringing in one big bat's not going to cure all the Mets' problems. They've got issues in the bullpen. They've got issues in the rotation. They've got issues in the lineup. They've got issues at all 3 phases of the game. Issues defensively. Maybe it is Buck Showalter. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like there's much of a sense of urgency with the Mets. It really doesn't. They're kind of just losing. Buck's saying that they're competing, he likes to fight, and they're just losing. And there's this mantra that, and look, I'm not trying to rush the baseball season away, and I hate this. I hate when people just say, and to a certain extent, it's true. There is still a ton of baseball left to be played. But once, the All-Star break is more than we're more than halfway through the season. With the All-Star break, I think a lot of people count as the halfway point. It's really not, because after the All-Star break, you have half of July, August, September, and that's it. So you really only have 2.5 months after that. You've already played 3 full months, 3.5 months of baseball going into that All-Star break. So, the Mets' time's running out, especially the fact that they're 6 games under 500 and they're 7 back in the wild card. And I think the organization, the players, the coaches feel, it'll be all right. We'll get hot in August and we'll make our way back. We'll get hot at some point. it kind of feels like they're just waiting for this team to catch fire, and they're just not. They're not catching fire. They're not getting on a win streak. And even when they do, they followed up with 6 straight losses. That's really the story of it. Sweep the Phillies, they lost 7 straight. Get a win against the, take care of business against, the Yankees and the Cardinals in games 1 and 2, and end up lose that series against the Cardinals the next 2 games, and then, lose against the Astros. It's horrible. So, day off today for the Mets. They'll be back tomorrow in Philly for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting. Comment down below. What are your thoughts on the Mets? Is this rock bottom? Is the season over? Is the season gone? Like, is it too far? Or do you still think they have a chance to come back from this? What is your feeling on the New York Mets? I am on the point at this point in the season, with them continue to play this bad going into July, as we get closer into July, I don't think there's anything this team's going to do to get back into this. And they're 7 games back in the wild card. That is a gauntlet. I mean, they are. I mean, they're 7 games back in the National League wild card. The only teams that are behind them, the Rockies, the Nationals, and the Cardinals. It's the only teams behind them. The Mets have, the 4th worst record in the National League. That is awful. So, that's what I got for the Mets. Horrible baseball. Comment down below your thoughts. Is it over? Is it not? Do they still have a chance? Is this rock bottom? Is it going to get worse? Or is this just the 2023 New York Mets, where they're just bad? And I've kind of jumped on that board. I think this is just what you're going to get out of this Met team. I don't see a big win streak coming. I don't see an ultimate second half after the All-Star break turnaround coming. I don't see 2-3 big acquisitions at the trade deadline that's going to take this team to another level and get them into the postseason and make a run coming. I just don't see it. But prove me wrong. Go out there and do it. I don't know. But this Met team has got a lot of issues. All right, so now I move on here to a little bit of hockey here to close things out. Henrik Lundqvist yesterday got officially inducted into the Hall of Fame class of 2023 for the Hockey Hall of Fame. It was his first year of eligibility. And obviously well-deserved. Awesome. It's been a really nice couple of days here as a New York Ranger fan with Peter Laviollette's press conference on Tuesday, where he said all the right things. I think a lot of Rangers fans, that maybe didn't like the hire at first are beginning to start to like the hire a little bit more with some of the things he said, some of the structure he's going to bring, going to try and put physicality and toughness into this team, which it's lacked over the past 2 seasons, and big reason why we've obviously fell short of our ultimate goal the last 2 years. So I think there's a lot of excitement there with the Rangers. And yesterday was kind of like the cherry on top, which was a nice week with the Laviolette press conference on Tuesday. And obviously yesterday getting Henrik Lundqvist, getting his into the Hall of Fame, 2023 Hockey Hall of Fame. It was his first year of eligibility, and he gets in, and it's awesome. Well-deserved, an awesome career, as we all remember last year. Was up, got his number 30 up in the rafters at Madison Square Garden, up there with Mark Richter and, all the other Ranger greats, and obviously Knicks greats as well. A lot of history in that building. And then this was kind of like the cherry on top of, in his retirement, as another ultimate goal for Henrik Lundqvist, one of the best goalies of all time. The best goalie in Ranger history, one of the best goalies of all time. He's definitely my favorite Ranger of all time. And I'm a younger generation sports fan, so growing up, Henrik Lundqvist was like the best Ranger player, was like he's my favorite Ranger of all time, because growing up, I started watching sports, as I mentioned, I don't fully remember the 2010, 2009 Jets teams. So I've never witnessed a Jets playoff game. Although I was alive, I don't remember those. So that's why, Aaron Rodgers coming to the Jets makes it a lot sweeter that we might make the playoffs. I don't remember, obviously, the Yankees 09 run. Obviously, the Jets haven't been there since 69, as we all know. I don't remember really much at all of the Rangers and the Kings in the Stanley Cup. But, I remember the 2015 seasons and the 2016 and, 2015 Eastern Conference Finals definitely sting still to this day, with the Game 7 where the Rangers didn't do a single thing offensively to help Lundqvist. They didn't get a single scoring chance in that game. Kreider had the one good chance in that game, and it really wasn't even that good. So, but obviously was an excellent career. Getting to the Cup with the Kings. That's the only thing that's missing with him, and that's not him. It's just the team they built around him, not the best scoring teams ever. And watching Igor last year against the Devils late in that series after Game 2, it felt a lot like watching Lundqvist that time, where he'd absolutely dominate, but the team doesn't give you anything in terms of goal scoring. But yeah, he was he's one of my favorite athletes of all time, especially New York. He's my favorite Ranger of all time. My favorite Jet of all time is Nick Mangold. My favorite Yankee of all time is CC Sabathia. So those are kind of the guys that I definitely truly love as athletes, and obviously what they did for their teams. And, here are some of just Henrik Lundqvist's stats over his years. To give you some of the numbers here, 459 career saves, 64 shutouts. That's 6th on the NHL all-time wins list. Only goalie to earn 30-plus wins in each of his first 7 seasons. He's the only NHL goalie to post 7 straight seasons with a .920 save percentage or better. He's the winningest goalie in Rangers franchise history. He's got the most shutout wins in franchise history. He won the Vezina Trophy in 2011, 2012. Some of his non-NHL accomplishments happened in the Winter Olympics, where he won a gold medal in 2006 for Sweden and won a silver in 2014. And again, we oftentimes grade players off of clutch and big moments, big spots. When the lights are bright, who's going to shine? Who's going to come out? There's guys that are really good, and then when the lights get bright, Game 7 comes, they struggle. Or they're really good in the regular season. Once the postseason comes around, they're not very good. And we've seen this a lot of times with athletes, especially in the New York market. Guys that love who loves the bright lights? Who's going to step up in big moments, the bright lights, and going to make plays that are going to be, talked about for forever, for the rest of time, right? Lundqvist was one of those guys, one of the clutchest hockey players, one of the biggest game players out there in terms of Game 7s. When you look at his Game 7 stats in his career, he's 6-2 with a 1.11 goals allowed against and a .961 save percentage in Game 7. When the lights were the brightest, when the games got bigger, Henrik Lundqvist, his play got even better. And that's something that's so great about him, is what he was able to do in big moments, in big games. New York, ton of pressure. The lights of not just the NHL, but the New York market shining on you. He was dominant in Game 7. One of the best Game 7 goalies in National Hockey, in the National Hockey League history, in NHL history. It just the way it is. He's one of the best. So, clutch, fantastic career, well-earned, all-time winning Ranger goalie, all-time shutout wins leader in Rangers history, one of the best goalies of all time, 459 career wins, dominant in Game 7. Henrik Lundqvist, first ballot Hockey Hall of Famer, and class of 2023. So that was definitely really cool to see yesterday as he officially gets in. And yesterday, it was the day to find out, and you hear all that. So that was really cool to see. All right, so now we close things out here, talking Yankees Mariners tonight as we get ready for the game 3 of the 3-game set, final game of the 3-game set. Yankees Mariners tonight. You got Wu on the mound for the Mariners. I believe I was looking today on Fantasy Baseball for guys to pick up. He's available. Not very good on the season, but he'll be on the mound tonight for the Mariners. You feel good about the Yankees' chances tonight. You really do, because as I mentioned, yesterday you kind of went into the game with Luis Castillo on the mound thinking it's going to be tough, but you got Brian Wu on the mound today, a guy that, he got a 7.30 ERA, really isn't anything special. So, you feel good about your chances today. Yankees took care of business at Castillo and George Kirby yesterday, or the other day. Find a way to split one of those games. You go out there on Wednesday, or Thursday rather, and take care of business and get the job done. So, that's what the Yankees try to do tonight. You got Herman on the mound for the Yankees. He's a 4-4 with a 4.30 ERA, over under 7.5, 7.5 Eastern. For some reason, I thought Schmidt was on the mound tonight, but I guess it's Herman Brito last night was very good. Brito, Randy Vasquez have been very, very good this year. So, two guys that have come up to be that fifth spot starter, which we haven't needed a ton of in June because we've had a lot of days off. They've been very good. So, Yankees go for the sweep today. With everything struggling, with all the things happening, they go for a series sweep of the Seattle Mariners, and hopefully they get that tonight. So, anyway, that'll do it for the podcast today. Again, comment down below your thoughts on the Mets. Is it over? Do they still got a chance? Is this rock bottom? What are you feeling, Mets fans? Comment down below. And your thoughts as well about Henrik Lundqvist getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. Awesome. Awesome to see that. And caps off a great career that Henrik Lundqvist had here as a New York Ranger. So that'll do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow closing things out. I have I believe, still kind of, working, but tomorrow potentially could have a special video up there for you guys and potentially could be doing a live stream tomorrow as well. So I'll kind of keep you guys updated. Again, at Bubbs52 on Twitter. I might post something as well on YouTube, like on the community tab. I don't post on there a ton, but I might post something about that. So if you want to, just stay tuned for that stuff. I'll keep you guys posted. Potential live stream tomorrow. Talking everything New York sports, maybe a little Jets as well. Tomorrow. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. We'll finish things out tomorrow. And as always, see you all back here tomorrow, whether it's live stream, video, got special video as well. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. And thanks for watching.